So you can go ahead and take those slices, throw it on the bread, and that is it, guys. That is a pretty stacked sandwich. The only thing that stays consistent is the grind. Keep on grinding. Hey, welcome back to the kitchen, everybody. Hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Had a couple of subscribers reach out in regards to protein, but I've had a couple of different people ask me how I get my protein. I've done some videos on this in the past, but I've kind of updated some stuff, so I wanted to share with you guys those updates. If you check out the playlist section of the channel, you'll see a My Healthy Foods playlist. I got a couple of different recipes in there. It's nothing crazy at all. I am no gourmet chef. I like quick, easy, and you know, it tastes good enough. That's what I like. I don't deviate too much when it comes to my dieting or when it comes to my protein, because the more you deviate, the more thought you have to put into it, the more time it takes a lot of the time. And so when you want to be fast and efficient and just get your protein needs met, you don't always need to have perfection, you know what I'm saying? So that's where this recipe kind of comes in. Today we're going to be talking about seitan. You guys, if you checked out the playlist, and if you're vegan especially, this is not just for vegans, it's for anybody. If you want low calorie protein, you're gonna find it difficult to find lower calorie protein than pea protein or seitan, or which is wheat gluten. All right, so if you're gluten intolerant, you don't want this recipe. But check this out. This is what I use. This is the brand I use. I'm not affiliated with them. I will leave a link, however, in the description of this video if you guys want to check them out. This is Anthony's Vital Wheat Gluten. All right, this is 110 calories per serving, and a serving consists of 1/4 of a cup. So you're getting a really solid boost of protein when you consume one of these steaks or burgers, however you want to make it. Today we're simply only going to be using the actual protein. In the past I've mixed it with vegetables, I've mixed it with beans, stuff like that, and you can certainly do that. But if you want something a little easier, even less calorie if you want, and just fast and easy, you know, this is what it is. So I'm going to show you guys how to get into that today. You're going to want 2 pots, all right? Now, you guys can figure out, depending on your caloric needs, you're going to be adding per scoop how much protein you want, how much seitan. I'm calling it protein because it's basically just protein. It's wheat gluten, which is wheat protein, right? So depending on the amount of calories that you want, that's going to be the amount of scoops that you end up adding to this recipe. All right, I use 6 scoops, so I'm going to take those 6 scoops, I'm going to put it into this pot right here. You're going to want 1 pot, and then you're going to want another pot. This is the broth pot. Now when it comes to broth, all you need to know is you need this seitan to taste decent. You need it to taste good. You want it to taste delicious. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a broth. What I did was I used things as a base for broth. You're going to use a ton of water. A majority of this broth is going to be water. You're going to add to it maybe some soy sauce, or something that I like better than soy sauce is tamari sauce. Tastes delicious. It's low calorie. I don't track the calories of the ingredients that are in the broth, because you have so much leftover broth by the time you're done. You're getting no calories from that, in my opinion. There's no need to count them. This recipe is so low in calorie altogether that I would not even worry about those small amounts of calories. Water, tamari sauce, or soy sauce, or whatever sauce you want. Whatever sauce you want. Just try to make sure it's on the lower calorie side. And spices, okay? This is steak seasoning. Whatever spices you want, whether it's Thai seasoning, whether it's sometimes I'll even add curry powder to this, and it tastes absolutely magnificent. So you're adding those ingredients to the water that is in this pot, okay? You're gonna end up with something similar to this. This broth I've probably had for 2 different batches of this food. I just keep it in the fridge like this, super easy, and I just boil it up when I'm ready to go again. When you first make this broth, you're just mixing everything up. You don't have to warm it. Just make sure it mixes up real nice. Now let's get into the actual mixing of this stuff. As I mentioned, I've used this particular pot of broth a couple of different times for my meals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to top it off. This is what I do every single time. You know, how often you change this broth, or if you want to save it or not, for the next time you cook is completely up to you. I don't measure anything. I go by taste. I add this up. I add all this stuff up. And if you want, when you're first making your initial pot of broth, you could always warm it up on the stove in order to allow this to heat better and mix together better. You can do that. You don't have to do it. Sometimes when things are warm, they mix together better. So for the initial pot of broth, before it's all mixed good, you know, when you're making your first batch, this is curry powder. So when you're making your first batch, you can go ahead and do that if you want. It's not necessary. Just throwing in some little hints there, okay? Trust me, I know this is not the most, the best cooking video that we have here, all right? Bear with me. I'm just trying to give you guys the best I can when it comes to this stuff. So you're going to top it off with some water. You want to bring it up nice and high. So this is a 4-quart pot. This is what I use. I bring it up to about this level here and add those seasonings in. Mix it up real good, and then you can taste that broth.
Kinda good. Need a little hot sauce, but it's kinda good though.
Tastes great to me. If you guys like what you taste, you go ahead and move forward. I might just add a little bit more salt and a little bit of cayenne pepper to taste, okay? Remember, there's a lot of water in here, so I'm pouring a lot of salt, but it's being distributed. And all these ingredients are going to be sucked into the seitan that we are creating. You will have leftovers, so don't worry. You are not using all the ingredients. Like I said, I've used this batch for plenty of different, at least two different meals so far. And I probably end up making, I want to say 3 of these pots a week. All right, mix this up good. Taste it. All right, very nice, very nice. I'm excited, I'm excited. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to take your empty pot here and you're going to add the wheat gluten to it. So I always keep a 1/4 cup measuring spoon in this. Again, you're going to add it straight to this empty pot. I'm personally going to add 6. I end up splitting each batch into 4s, okay? So each steak, after I'm done, each steak that I split is going to be, if I remember correctly, approximately 160 calories of pure protein. This is 3. So you're getting a solid protein meal when it comes to this. 4. And if you're vegan, you know, you might be missing some protein, so this will definitely help with you. 5. Or again, if you just want lower calorie protein in general, even if you're not vegan, this is a great way to do it. 6. So that's 6 scoops here in the pot. We'll put this aside. See, it's just a powder, okay? You're gonna take some of the broth, okay? The consistency is key. What I personally like to do is, I like to add as little broth as possible to this mixture. You want just enough. You want just enough to be able to cover the powder and get it into the form you want. Okay? So you pour some of the broth in, and now you mix that around with this powder until it becomes a dough. You're creating a dough. I don't know if you guys have ever baked before.
You can give it a little bit of dust on the top.
But if you have, you know what the consistency of dough is, and if you haven't, you'll know by the end of this video. This is the texture that I like to go for. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the seitan appreciation page on Facebook, but if you do hop on there and you want to get a little more creative, you got tons of people doing tons of more creative things than me. But like I said, I'm doing this strictly because I like quick and easy meals. Nobody likes to take a ton of time cooking, you know, especially when it's not a special occasion, or at least me, you know what I mean? I don't need too much variety. As long as I get my calories in and my vitamins in, that's all that matters. So I'm going to add a little bit more broth because I want the powder, after being mixed with the broth, to be completely covered. So as you can see, it's starting to turn into a meat-like substance. It's starting to turn into a dough. I'm just mixing it around. I'm really gently just turning this stuff. And once the outside of the form is completely wet, now, see, it's completely wet. Now you can go ahead and start to mash it, just gently press it. The reason why you're going to gently press it is because you want to make sure that the broth gets within all of the crevices of this seitan, okay? Now the shape you want this thing to be is completely up to you. As you guys can see on camera, I just kind of form it however I like to form it. I form it in a way that I can cut it in 4 different ways. That's what I do. Keep in mind, the more rough you are with this dough, the harder and more thicker the dough is going to end up becoming after cooked. It's not a bad thing if it's super thick, but you may not want it. And you're going to see how I like to go ahead and put this food to work on the plate when we're done. So gently press this down, just like that. As you can see, I'm forming it to the circumference of the bowl. I'm going to flip it. Just going to press down one more time. I'm not beating this thing up. I'm not going crazy. I'm just lightly pressing it to make sure all the liquid spreads throughout the dough. And as you go, it'll soak up any extra liquid, if there's any dry spots, and if you do have any lingering extra liquid, you can just pour it right back into your broth right from the pan, all right? So as you can see, I put the perfect amount of liquid. I never measure, I just add as little as you know, I just keep adding as I go. Just gently add a little bit more until you get the consistency that you actually need. Now in the background, I'm putting the top on the pan. I'm starting the heat up. So I'm boiling the broth. I'm going to bring it to a boil while I'm doing this next step. We're going to take the seitan. You can put it on a plate or you could do it in the pot. I'm pretty much putting it on the plate just so you guys can see what I'm doing. Alright, so you're going to go like this. If you want to do it like me, again, there's no rules, right? Whatever shape you want, however many pieces you want, you can cut them real thin. It doesn't matter. Right now, I personally want to cut it into 4 pieces. I find that if you threw this whole thing into the pot, it's not going to boil all that evenly. I think it would be better if you did cut it into some smaller pieces. So I cut mine into 4 pieces. Doesn't have to be pretty, it's just food. You know, if I was doing this for a restaurant, I would do things a lot different, but I'm not. So you're going to press this down, and then you're going to grab a sharp knife, or even a pair of scissors. I'm going to use the scissors because I find that the scissors will probably just be easier. Okay. Now, you see we have this little log of dough, okay? You're going to take this dough, and you're just going to cut it into 4 pieces. Try to get them, if you're doing this for the purpose of calories, you're going to want each piece to have the same or similar amount of calories. So you're just going to try to cut them as evenly as possible. You want your meals to be kind of consistent so you're full, and you also want the calories to be kind of consistent for your tracking needs. A very, very simple loaf of dough. And you're going to take these scissors or your knife and cut it. 1, 2, 3. 3 cuts equals 4 pieces. So this is your dough. Okay? This is it. You're going to boil this now. So while that pot's boiling, I figured I'd talk to you guys about what to expect in case you haven't tried seitan in this fashion before. Because you cut it into 4 different pieces, you're going to end up getting a steak, something, you know, a steak, right? What I find a lot of people have the problem when it comes to seitan is the fact that the texture is a little bit different than what they expect. Now, I find that that's reasonable. That's definitely reasonable. You're cooking and eating solid protein. So imagine biting into a steak and ripping the steak up, right? The texture is going to be a little weird. Even if the steak is cooked you know, the texture might feel a little strange. So what I like to do is I like to slice after this is boiled. After it's boiled, I like to slice it super thin, and I'll show you what that looks like later on. You put it on a sandwich or something like that, or you can have the steak and cut it up into smaller pieces, eat it with a side of broccoli or pasta or whatever you want to do. That's what you can do. Remember, you can add whatever seasoning you want to this broth, and your food will end up tasting like that broth. So however you want, however creative you are, you can go ahead and be creative and know that it's going to taste very, very good by the time you're done if you take the time to really think your meal out. What do you like to eat? I'm very easy. I just throw some spice in, throw some salt in, make sure it's got enough water, and I'm done. I'm not doing this for deliciousness. If I was, which I've done in the past, I've made briskets, you know, seitan brisket. I made meatballs, a whole bunch of different stuff. When you really take the time, you can do a lot with this. But this is for super simple, super easy, quick protein needs. So keep in mind, guys, my wife actually reminded me to say this. This is a very low calorie meal. Now I mentioned you're gonna wanna make your food in terms of how many calories you want. So each piece, according to what I did, should be approximately 160 calories, okay? You're gonna form this stuff and add as many scoops as you want based on your caloric intake and how much protein you want. That's another key factor, how much protein you want, because you're using this as a form of sustenance, right? To keep you full, to get your calories in, but also because this is a solid piece of protein. So within each serving, you have 23 grams of protein. So within each piece here, you have 23 grams of protein. And for the calories, that's a very, very, very good amount of protein to have because it's very low in calorie. So depending on your caloric needs and your protein intake, you can go ahead and eat one of these, eat two of these, eat 5 of them, whatever you want. This is just, again, a quick, easy, low-calorie way to get your protein needs met without having to stress too much in the kitchen. Something that happens to me sometimes is I'll put this pot on and all of a sudden it starts to boil before I ever expected it to. So don't leave it alone while it's boiling, all right, while the top is on. Once the top is off, I personally feel comfortable with leaving it by itself because I turned the heat down just to the lowest setting so that it just simmers. You're no longer boiling it. You're just bringing it to that boiling point and now turning it down. You're gonna go ahead and take these pieces that you've created and you can throw it in this pot. Now, today it's demonstration purposes only, so I'm going ahead and just making this as simple as possible. What I like to do sometimes is I'll make maybe, instead of just 4, I'll go ahead and cook up, 12 of them to last me the whole week because you want this to be easy. So then you know your protein needs are met for the whole week. If you do it all on one day, you don't have to do this every single day. So that's up to you guys, whatever you like to do. You're gonna go ahead and put those pieces in there and you're gonna keep the stove on and just let them simmer. Grab a timer or use Google or something and throw it on 35 minutes just to be safe. We'll come back in 35 minutes to check out how this is coming. So the 35 minutes is up. Now, in order to take this off, you're just gonna shut the heat and you're just gonna have a plate ready. Well, this is how I do. You can do it however you want. But I just stick a fork right into it. And when you pull it out, as you'll see, it's grown a lot in size because it's soaked up that broth and it's super heavy. So you're just gonna pull these out one by one, throw them onto a plate or into a, whatever storage kind of container you might want to do. And here you have it. There's your seitan steaks. Now, once this stuff has cooled down, you can go ahead and throw it into a sandwich. You can cut it up, put it into a soup. You can make pasta with it, whatever you want to do. This is your meat if you're a vegan or if you're looking for a low-calorie solution that's going to get you full and get your protein needs met, right? So you can go ahead and you can eat it like this. Once it cools down, it will be very, very hot. or you can let it sit. Now, if you have 4 of these, chances are you're going to be letting some of them sit. You're going to find that once they sit, once they cool off, and they've been sitting for a while, they're going to become much tougher than the consistency that they even are now. And they're pretty decent consistency right now as far as, you know, toughness goes, but it will get tougher, which is fine because you can go ahead and use that as more of a steak. Okay, it's going to become more of a steak than it already is. Right now, it's a little bit softer. Imagine taking a roast out of the oven and how soft it is. But if you were to put it on the side for a few hours, and once it gets cold and once that meat solidifies and kind of hardens a bit, how much more tension or, you know, stability that meat might have. So what I recommend is to go ahead, if you're hungry now, you can go ahead and cut up one of these. I'll show you how I do mine in case you're curious, in case you've never done this before. You can slice them as thin as you want. You can get thinner than this. Whatever you like to do. It'll get much easier to cut once it actually cools, but I'm pretty hungry now. I haven't eaten yet. So I'm going to go ahead and cut one of these things up. And now you have these slices, all right? So just like meat, you're going to carve the meat up. Same deal. You can cut it as thin as you want. Look how thin. I'm going to get this piece here. And this is going to help with the texture situation, okay? Because it might feel a little weird eating this stuff at first. But this is going to really help with the texture. You're not going to be eating a huge block of protein. You're going to be eating slices of protein. And that's going to make it feel more normal, in my opinion. So you can go ahead and take those slices, throw it on the bread. Again, you can cut them as thin or as thick as you want. And just put it on the bread. And then, you know, I'm a huge advocate of salt. I love salt. It helps me with my bodybuilding. It also makes things obviously taste better. Add a little bit of salt, and then you can go ahead and add whatever types of like sauces that you want. Any kind of low-calorie sauce that you find to be good, any high-calorie sauce, whatever you want. You add whatever you want to it, just like a regular sandwich. And that is it, guys. That is a pretty stacked sandwich. Can't wait to eat it. That's it, guys. I hope this was helpful. I know this was not the most charismatic cooking video, but it's not supposed to be. You know, everything that I try to do is functional at the end of the day. This, to me, looks pretty functional. I hope that you guys appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you guys soon. If you want, check out the other videos on the playlist that will show you other ways to go ahead and make this stuff. At the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, as long as you go ahead and get your protein needs met and you're happy because it's tasting good like this stuff does, you're going to be fine. Look forward to talking to you guys soon. Be safe. Catch you guys in the next video.